Hey, what's going on, everybody? Navid Moazzez here. I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur and creator of Virtual Summit Mastery, and we help people just like you exponentially grow your email list, influence, and revenue. And for this session, we are going to talk about one-day summits and how you can use this to grow your list, profits, influence, all of that. Also, how you can use this for affiliate marketing, and there's some really cool strategies we're gonna share here. And I brought in my good friend and also a virtual summit expert himself, Dr. Mark T. Wade, and he's gonna share some of his strategies. Basically, gonna be a very organic conversation here around this. He's also the founder of Virtual Summit Software, Hustle and Scale, and a lot of cool stuff he has going on as well. So I think this is gonna be really cool for you guys to get a kind of behind the scenes look at what you can do with this. Obviously, I'm a fan of kind of the 5 to 7 day summits. We have also taught this in Virtual Summit Mastery, basically how you can do one-day summits as well as a complement to these a little bit longer summits. So that's kind of what we will dive into here on this session. So with that being said, warm welcome, Mark.
Hey, I am stoked to be here. This is going to be awesome, Navid. I hope your audience is ready for this because you and I can talk summits for hours, but we're going to get super focused. We're going to get super clear and drop some amazing value. So I'm stoked.
Awesome, man. Yeah, so I mean, I've interviewed you before for another summit. We did some cool stuff there as well. But really, kind of to give some insights, maybe you can break it down. Like, what's the main difference? Because you're using both. I'm using kind of both in my business. What's the difference between like a traditional summit and the one-day summit? So, kind of getting right to the point here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're totally right with that. Like there is distinct differences. And if your number one goal is to build a big or a massive email list, then the best way to do that is with a multi-day summit. And as you said, I'm a huge fan of both. We run 2 to 4 multi-day summits and 4 to 8 one-day summits every year in all of my companies. But kind of the difference with a multi-day summit, the way I kind of describe it, and I'm sure your audience has heard in depth about this, but it's a series of pre-recorded videos that solve a problem or a series of problem by industry and niche experts over a defined amount of time. So with a multi-day summit, obviously it's anywhere from 3 to 7 or 14 days, or maybe even longer, with anywhere from about 20 to 30 speakers onwards, upwards of 80 to 100 speakers. Now, with a one-day summit, and with that being said, they can be done quickly if you've got good insights or you got a great teacher like Navid here who's giving you amazing strategies. They can be done in a relatively short amount of time, let's say like 90 days. But if you're going to do kind of a bigger, well-planned, thought-out event, you may be putting a little bit more time into that, say 6 months or maybe even longer. Now, with a one-day summit, it's exactly as it sounds. It's one day, but it doesn't mean that it's a full day in content. It just means that your audience has one day to consume it. And it has anywhere from about 5 to upwards of 15 speakers, with 10 kind of being the sweet spot. Now, kind of the big difference, like with a multi-day summit, as we've talked about, that's kind of like, it's what I like to call like you're bringing the army. You're going to go invade, you're going to conquer, and it's going to be an extremely massive and successful event. But it's primarily focused and used for list building. Of course, it generates profit, authority, and relationships, right? Now, with a one-day summit, you have a lot more versatility and ability to kind of do different things with it, some of which we're going to get into today's strategy session. But it also can be done in a much quicker amount of time. So I typically say 30 to 60 days is all you really need to do a one-day summit. And if you're taking longer than 60 days, you're probably procrastinating. And you can actually, if you've started to do these, can do them even quicker. I mean, we can knock out a one-day summit typically in 7 to 14 days. But the really cool thing with it is it's much more specific. It's much more defined. So it overcomes the big problem that we're seeing right now, across the board, which is attention span. So it allows us to get much more defined, and it gives us much more uses. So for example, we've talked about list building, but we also have premium like monetization strategies. We have affiliate promotion strategies, membership priming strategies, et cetera, et cetera. So I really love the one-day summit. Not anything against the multi-day summit. Like we definitely do those as well. But I love the one-day summit as well because a lot of people getting started don't have the kind of guidance that you get from Navid here, right? So they're out there just trying to figure this stuff out on their own. And if you're trying to figure out a multi-day summit on your own, you're probably going to run into some complication. But with a one-day summit, it's much easier to get started. So I highly recommend most people start with the one-day summit and then kind of moves forward over to the multi-day.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's the kind of
for
the
sure, man.
differences there.
Yep. Absolutely, man. I completely agree actually with what you said there. Like a multi-day summit can take, we have a 90-day plan in Virtual Summit Mastery basically for such a summit. Some people take a little bit longer, some take a little bit less time, depending on obviously their skill set and all of that. And that obviously has you can have bigger impact with that. You obviously 20 to 30 speakers, sometimes even more. I've seen like 40, 50 speakers. Obviously, you're gonna, even if some speakers don't mail for you or promote for you, you can still achieve some level of success and get a few thousand opt-ins, tens of thousands, even in some cases, even hundreds of thousands. I've seen some really big summits, right? But with a one-day summit, I kind of like it. If you obviously have a program like Virtual Summit Mastery or some guidance, you can do a multi-day summit first because you can get actually that splash in the industry you kind of looking for. But obviously, if you don't, or if you're doing this as an in-between strategy, that's kind of how I use these one-day summits. In between my bigger ones, I might just bring on 5 to 10 speakers, which we're going to get into a little bit. I'm sure you have some insights on that. How many is the ideal number for a one-day summit? But that's kind of my take, like 5 to 10 speakers. It could even be less speakers, maybe during a launch and stuff like that as a live cast. I've seen these kind of one-day summits there as well utilized. But that's kind of the take I have on this. What do you say amount of speakers, Mark, you need for these? Is like 5 to 10 a good estimate for these summits?
Yeah, and I also, just to reiterate one of the points you said, which is so great, is that when you don't have to just get started with a one-day summit. So like, I should clarify that I'm usually recommending to people that are doing it on their own. If you have guidance, you got an amazing coach like Navid here, then you're good to go. Another really effective reason for using a multi-day summit is entering into a brand new niche. So if you're going from like a zero email list and you're trying to go into a new niche or industry, there's no better way to kind of like, one, build that audience and get known than a virtual summit, like a multi-day summit. So I totally agree with you there. And you're right. We do use one-day summits, not so much as in between. They're actually our ongoing lead generation strategy. And what I actually mean by that is, for us, summits in general, but specifically one-day summits, those are the beginning of our customer journey. Yeah. Most people, I'd say 90% of people that come into our world come in through a one-day summit, and then they go throughout the rest of the customer journey, going on to the additional things. Yeah. Now with speakers, honestly, there's two ways of looking at this. There is no right or wrong answer, as you already know, Navi. But what I would say is, if you're going to err in the caution of less. Okay. But the thing to understand is, when it comes to generate, if your primary goal is to build a list, the lower amount of speakers you have, probably the less size of a list you're going to generate. However, if you're just going to do one for the course of the year, then probably doing one with 5 speakers is not the most effective strategy. They would probably be more effective to do a multi-day summit. However, if you use the strategy like we do, which is we run a new one-day summit every quarter, then we usually set for about 10 speakers, because what we found in our niche, in our industry, with 10 speakers that are actually promoting, we can generate anywhere from about 3,000 to 5,000 leads. Now, it's not a huge list, but keep in mind, these are active and engaged leads. So then we monetize them on the back end. But I've seen somebody actually who uses the one-day summit strategy to the extreme. Is kind of an example I always talk about. And he's in chatbot marketing. He has a chatbot, and his name's Larry Kim, actually. And he does a different one-day summit almost every week. And he picks a topic, always under the umbrella of what it is. It's something in marketing. He'll bring 5 speakers on, and they'll just pre-record it. And actually, here's a crazy thing. He doesn't even do all the interviews. He has somebody else that'll do the interviews, and he just markets it. But he's got these essentially one-day summits going out nonstop. Now, those are probably not generating thousands and thousands of leads. But, if they're generating 1,000 or 2,000 leads and he has one of them a week, you see how this can now start to just be the ongoing part of your customer journey.
For sure, man. And that's a great example. Actually, my team, they have worked with Larry, my designer, have done I think he done a bigger summit as well. But now I think he's doing these kind of one-day summits. But as you said in the beginning there as well, when you talked about kind of what the difference is, yes, you can do a one-day summit a lot quicker. That's kind of why I like it a lot as well. And what you said as well is not just kind of, I should rephrase this, like it's not just in between, but it can be every summit we do today is an evergreen strategy as well. Like, yes, you might run it live. You can't even air it evergreen from the very start, right? So that's also another thing. If you don't have time to line up promotional partners, you can actually do it evergreen right from the beginning. Just keep in mind what kind of this plays a role in your customer journey, as Mark kind of talked about. Kind of, are you going to have a one-click upsell? Are you going to have bump offers? What else do you need to have in place in order to actually monetize this? And obviously, if you have a lot more and the cart value increases, you actually don't need maybe as many speakers, as much of a list, because you can monetize this. And obviously, if you have high ticket or some courses, whatever in the back end, this also going to make sense. Or what you've done also, and I myself, we're going to be the affiliate products, right? Promoting something that you don't even have to create on your own in the back end, and using that kind of list to drive home that. So that's kind of something we can get into, I guess. Anything else you wanted to share around this, Mark?
Yeah, no, I would just say with the one day summit, the cool thing to think about, like, this is what I usually say, okay? Because I've seen him, at least over on my side, and I've made this mistake before, is sometimes we try and think of like, what type of summit should I run? And we think of like, well, what's interesting, what's trending, what's hot, and so we'll be like, ooh, that's an interesting topic, and let's build a summit around that. From what I've experienced, the best way to actually do, especially a one-day summit, is to actually start with the problem that you're solving. And the best way to do that is, where do you want to take this audience that you're going to be generating, that you're going to be creating? They're going to be looking to you for advice. So the best way I would say to do it is start with where's your end goal? Like, what's your program, your course, your product, whatever you're trying to take people to? What's a problem that solves? And then pull that problem out, and then build your one-day summit around that. So now this gives you a lot of opportunities if you have more programs or products or things like that. That's what I mean when I say this begins like the beginning of your customer journey. People come in engaged, and then they go on to that next step, which is going to be your program or your product. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's a great example, because I always tell my students to kind of niche down until it hurts, right? But I think when you do a one-day summit, maybe you can have, I don't know what you would do. We can share some examples, but for example, if you have 10 speakers, maybe one of them cover, one aspect of this. So it kind of follows through. If you have a course in the back, and maybe each one covers something that would be covered as well in your course, but I guess more in depth in that case. Can you share something that you have done around this? Maybe an example, the health space, or anything else you've done, and kind of so people, so it really hits home with people how they can actually pick their topic. Maybe they have already hosted kind of, it's, at least if they're in my world, right? They've hosted a bigger summit, and now they're thinking, how can I do a one-day summit, a smaller one, and not dilute kind of what I've done with the bigger ones, right? Or at least make it as effective as the bigger one here.
So you actually, another kind of little pro tip right here, because you just got my mind going with a cool idea that we talk about. So for your students that have already done a multi-day summit, here's the cool thing. You can splice that apart, and now you can have multiple one-day summits. You don't always have to come up with a brand new topic. So if your multi-day summit has specific themes or categories throughout it, you can pull that out and make it a one-day summit. And I think, Navid, you do this as well. Like, you have legacy kind of summits. So for example, you can go back, with the virtual summit software, we have the Ever Summit feature. So it essentially allows you to rerun your summit as if it was live, ongoing forever. So what we do with this is you can actually pull apart one of those sets of speakers and put it in as a one-day summit, create its own theme around that, and then actually reach back out to those speakers, let's say 6 months, 12 months, whatever later, and say, hey, we're turning this into a legacy summit, or we're, call it something cool. We're going to revitalize this, give it another push. And we'd love for you to go ahead and send out another 1 or 2 emails. And a lot of times, especially if you have a good relationship with them, they'll do it. So you can actually reutilize the same content in a different way with one-day summits as well. So that's a cool thing. But you got my mind going there when you were talking about that.
Just one comment on that before you keep going. That's actually a really good tip, because that's kind of why I think when I'm doing kind of sessions like this, or for kind of list building school and stuff like that, I'm really thinking about how can I make this content as evergreen as possible. Maybe I want to use this for something completely different in the future and not kind of redo this session. Maybe this can apply to a course creation summit or a sales funnel summit, whatever it is, right? And then I want to reuse this maybe in a one-day summit format, maybe in a multi-day summit format. And then that speaker, they're getting more exposure. So if it's a good fit in their calendar, they might actually promote that. And that's kind of something I've shared with my students, like really think about this, because, Chandler Bolt is a great example. I know you interviewed him also for your podcast, Mark. Basically what he did, he basically had his, multi-day summit, then he turned that into a podcast, because he didn't really want to use that content anymore in that shape or form. And that's kind of, you always think about the evergreen content, how you can repurpose things, and then you can obviously get more out of the time you're spending to do this as well.
And if you have it evergreen, like you're saying right there, or you have like the Ever Summit feature, either one, you can actually tell your speakers like, hey, you can put this in your follow-up or your nurture sequence or your automated campaigns, and it can just sit there and generate traffic for you ongoing. So yeah, obviously love evergreen Ever Summit strategies. So back to like the 2 point, or back to a couple examples you were saying. Sure. I'll give you two examples. One, just so the audience can kind of see this from two different lights. And also just to clarify, I have another company called the American Posture Institute, which is why I'm giving these examples of health summits and why Navid's asking about it. So I'm a healthcare professional by trade, a postural neurologist. So we have that company over there, and that was built on summits. And then from there is where I went over into the virtual summit software. So just in case anybody's like, why does he keep talking about all these neurology summits and stuff? Yeah. But anyways, so two examples. First one is a premium. So I said there's multiple different frameworks that you can use for one-day summits. Most commonly that we're always talking about is like the list building one. That's where people opt in for free, they get the content, and then they can purchase it for ongoing access. Now, if you've already got a list and you're just looking to monetize that list, you can do a premium summit. So a premium one-day summit. Now, the cool thing with this, which you can't actually do with a multi-day summit, is you could actually not even have any speakers on it, because you're not trying to build the list, you're trying to monetize the list. So you could actually just be the only speaker on this one-day summit, or of course you could bring other speakers in as well. So one example we had, every quarter we use something to monetize our list, as well as different versions to grow our list. So we did a neuro fundamentals. So one of our main programs is a postural neurology program. So we have a lot of healthcare professionals who are interested in neurology. So our main product is like a $2,000 product, right? But we have to start that customer journey. People aren't going to go from meeting you to buying a $2,000 or $5,000 product. So neuro fundamentals was a premium one-day summit that we did for like $200. We sent it to a list. That list was, I believe, just under 4,000 people that we had that were interested in our neurology program. And with 4 emails, it did around $32,000 or $35,000. So that's an example of a premium one-day summit. And the specificity of it was neuro fundamentals, learn neurology in a day. So the problem that we were overcoming, bringing it back to that, is most of the people who want to learn neurology in our niche, the problem they encounter is either the programs are 2 to 4 years long, or they cost the amount of a car, right? So it's super expensive or takes super long to do. So we overcame those problems, and we put it inside of that one-day summit by saying, learn neurology in a day. And it was a $200 program. Now, of course, that just then moved them further along our customer journey towards the next step. Now, an example of a list building one-day summit that we did also in the neurology realm was called we did a virtual neurology summit. And the problem, the topic was brain-based solutions for chronic pain. And it was geared specifically towards healthcare professionals. So that was a free one, and it overcame that problem. Now, what we ended up doing, and we had other speakers on it, so we used it as a list builder. And I think it did just under 5,000 leads. And keep in mind, you're hearing me, like, these aren't big numbers, right? I'm a big proponent of the fact that you don't have to have a big list to be successful, because this virtual neurology summit actually ended up doing over $250,000 when it was all said and done. So you don't need, it's great to have a big list, but it's also better to have a list that's engaged and qualified. So from the virtual neurology summit, which was brain-based solutions for chronic pain, where we had, I think, 10 to 12 different people talking about the solutions to this problem, we then moved them to the next step, which was a course we created called Advanced Brain-Based Solutions, or I think it was Advanced Chronic Pain Solutions. So you can see how, it's almost the exact same thing. The difference is this was a course with one single solution taught by my partner, whereas this was multiple solutions brought in from other experts that we used to build that audience and then move them down the customer journey. So those are two kind of like little examples with that. Navid, I know you have quite a few examples as well of some specific topics that people can do or have done.
Absolutely. I mean, for my students, I actually started teaching this a few years back, and then obviously we connected, and then kind of this synergy, because I didn't even know you were doing some of this at the time. That was like 2016, 2017. I taught it as a masterminds and kind of exclusively there, and then now recently I've been started talking about it more in the Virtual Summit Mastery program as well, to kind of help students to do something, in addition to these kind of longer summits, which yes, they do take a little more time. You can have more impact, but again, the one-day summits can have massive impact if you do it the right way and you have the kind of customer journey set up correctly. So Jesse Krieger is a great example kind of from our students. He had done like bestseller summit online, and then he did a summit called, that was a one-day summit he did afterwards, called, I think it was called the Right Book Your Love Summit. I think that's kind of what it was called. And he kind of launched this on Valentine's Day of all days as well. So he got a few thousand leads from this. Basically, for him, it was more as a list build, this one. He has like high-end kind of publishing services. So he just wanted to do a summit he could pull off kind of quickly and not do one of these bigger ones with a big affiliate push. And what I say to my students, kind of these one-day summits can be promoted more or less like a partner webinar. You don't have to have this kind of 2 to 3 week kind of promo. You can do this kind of a week in advance and kind of sending a few emails. That's kind of enough usually, 1 or 2 emails from the partners, and you should be able to get a solid list. If you obviously have, let's say 8 to 10 speakers at least on board, you should definitely be able to get, 1,000 to a few thousand leads or emails, subscribers signing up for this. I don't know if that's kind of been your experience, but for me personally, as you said, you don't need to have the biggest list here. You actually need to just kind of monetize the list you're building. And I've seen people building multi-6-figure or even 7-figure businesses just with a few thousand subscribers, 5 to 10,000 or even like 15,000. You can build a very successful business with just that kind of smaller email list, but very engaged. So that's kind of my take to this. We can obviously dive into a little bit more how I've used this for kind of affiliate marketing and stuff. I know you've done this as well successfully, Mark. There's so much to talk about around this. I don't know if you have any comments around what I just said there.
No, well, I mean, you definitely put the nail in the coffin there. It's again, it's not about and this I harp on this a lot because I know people sometimes they feel disappointed if they run a summit and it doesn't do like what they're thinking. Like it's kind of, I don't know why for some reason people look at summits the way they kind of look at launches and expect it to be the exact same, but it doesn't. It's more about the summit is about building a relationship. If you look at it as solve a problem, especially the one-day summit is solve a problem, build a relationship. If you do that, you're going to be so much more successful. Actually, the whole way we even got started in online business is when I went from the healthcare, like my brick and mortar practice, we decided, to go into online business, and we decided to run a summit. But and I think this was like in 2014 or 15, I can't remember, but I didn't even have any influence or authority. So I couldn't get enough people on my summit to actually do a full multi-day summit. We got 9 people, 2 of them being me and my partner, so 7. So we just got resourceful and we ran it as a one-day summit, and it ended up generating around 3,500 leads and then around $28,000. But more importantly, that summit became the skeleton or the backbone of the certification we went on to create, which became a multi-million-dollar certification. Yeah. And I'd also say the first launch I ever did was to a list of 900 people, and it was $136,000. So don't get confused about list size, because I know it's important to constantly be building the list, but it's more important to be building a relationship with that list than just worrying about building a list. So happy to dive into the next aspect of this. So
absolutely. I mean, also just one final comment on the kind of topics was, let's say you've done a multi-day summit. You mentioned basically you can take, maybe you have a few different segments of that summit or different things you've covered. Taking 1 or 2 of these things and covering that on several multi or one-day summits, I think that's a great strategy. With List Building School, we obviously cover, how to grow your list, different strategies, like in terms of kind of, how to grow your list with YouTube and how to grow your list with, Instagram, stuff like that. I might do a YouTube or video marketing summit, right? And maybe do that one day or whatever, right? So you can bring on experts. I've seen other companies do this as well, kind of social media examiner. I'm not sure if there's one-day summits, but they definitely have something. They're actually paid summits usually, what they have done, which they won't grow, but they don't need to grow the list. So you can have always the purpose there, right? They have a massive list, they have a lot of traffic. So for them, it's more about kind of, I guess, monetizing a little bit that list. It's still really inexpensive usually, the summits they're hosting. So that's kind of also a strategy you mentioned, kind of the premium. But I think for most people who are on here, would you say kind of the going the free route is kind of the way to go in most cases?
Yeah, I mean, especially like if your goal is to build a list, then yeah, it needs to be free because
Yeah.
that's going to be the best way to build the list. It's the other different frameworks have different objectives and solutions. So
Yeah.
it always goes down for everybody listening in here to what's your goal or your objective. It's to build the list, then yeah, it needs to be free. If it's, as you were saying at the beginning, Navid, if it's to build relationships, okay, then that's what we're going to be focusing on. Of course, you're probably going to build your list and you're going to monetize it, et cetera, et cetera. But you got to identify what's your ultimate goal so you can make the smaller, finite details or strategies around it aligned with that. So that becomes more effective.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yes, one question around this, Mark. Would you say that, I mean, at least in my mind, the funnel can look pretty similar to kind of a multi-day. You have like the free summit, you have a landing page for that. People sign up, you feature the speakers there, and then obviously you go and they sign up, they get like an all access pass, premium pass kind of VIP offer. Is that kind of how you position it as well? And then would you have like a bump offer, one-click upsells in that kind of flow after they purchase the all access pass? What kind of are you doing, at least for what you have done personally? And I can share a little bit my ideas around this, that you kind of monetizing the summits right from right from actually when people sign up for it.
Yeah, definitely. So of course it's going to look very similar. The biggest difference for me when I'm running like a multi-day summit versus a one-day summit, with a multi-day summit, I'm putting so much time and energy and effort, and I'm actually, I'm pulling a lot of strings to get all of these speakers on who are not going to turn around and tomorrow immediately do another program or project with me, right? Yeah. So I need to squeeze the maximum out of that multi-day summit. So I would say I put a little bit more high pressure, more on the sales aspect of a multi-day summit, meaning like there's more urgency built in. There's more push to get the sale. With the one-day summit, for me, I know that my ultimate goal, like I'm not taxing 80 speakers. I'm asking 5 to 10 speakers. And then I could literally ask another 5 or 10 next month and another 5 or 10. So I have a lot of resources or a lot of ability with that. So I'm not as worried about squeezing the dollars out of them on a one-day summit. My ultimate goal is to build the relationship. So I do offer, ongoing on-demand access. I'll throw in some stuff. And then of course we have the upsell or the bump offers, things like that. But I know that where I'm going to monetize this audience is going to be on the back end, on the rest of the customer journey. So what's kind of cool, what I actually enjoy doing, what I've been doing is I've been using our one-day summits more as kind of like labs or research studies, right? So we've been trying all kinds of different things, and some work, some don't, but it's cool. Like, I mean, and actually my podcast, the Virtual Summit podcast, interviewing like summit experts like yourself has given me so many more ideas to try that I'm constantly in there like, let's try and offer this here. Let's try and see if this will work. Let's not offer anything, but like bring this into the picture. And, so the cool thing with a one-day summit is once you see how easy they are to run and how effective they are, then you start to want to run them all the time. Essentially every problem you see, like, oh, my audience is asking me about this, or my audience is asking me about that. You start to go, oh, that's a one-day summit. Oh, that's a one-day summit. And if you're doing multiple one-day summits, then you can start to play with it. You can go, okay, for example, let's test out the decoy effect versus let's actually offer time slots available here, or some cool stuff that I've seen. I haven't done this one yet. But Navid, I think we were talking about this on the podcast, maybe even, but like I've seen other people using like maybe you're not the best interviewer in the world, and that's okay. It's understandable. So they bring like an MC on or a co-host or something like that. So it's what really allows you to do. You don't want to experiment with your all out multi-day summit, right? That needs to go well. But with a one-day summit, you can play around. You can try new things, and who knows, maybe invent something super effective that Navid will have you on his next summit talking about.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's why I love doing things like this, right? And also interviewing people like yourself who are using summits in your business, and also my students. I'm learning constantly by having like a platform like you have with the Virtual Summit podcast, interviewing people, featuring them, and kind of seeing kind of behind the scenes of what people are doing, obviously. And I think that's really interesting to kind of, especially for one-day summits, you can experiment a little bit. I like also the evergreen aspect of that. You can actually start right from the beginning with evergreen, whether that's a one-day or a multi-day. So you might not have to, as you call it, kind of tax your speakers or push them as hard initially. Maybe they have some stuff going on, but if it's an evergreen thing that you are going to have ever summit, basically ever summit mode, then you can actually ask speakers that they promote when it fits them, fits their schedule essentially, and then you can basically get the them to sign up to your list from their audience and stuff like that. It's a lot easier to do it that way. That's why we also, for List Building School 2.0, we're actually going to make it completely evergreen after the fact we have run it live, so people can just put that in their nurture sequence, as Mark mentioned before, and you can do a lot of things with it. They can feature it on the blog, and basically they get more out of it as affiliate commissions, and especially if you have added kind of through that customer journey, so they can get commission throughout as well. But I wanted to cover the price points a little bit of the one-day summit, so still people get an idea of what they can do with this. What are you doing with the price points for all access pass, bump offers, any upsells you're having there, Mark?
Yeah, and before I go into that, I just have to say I'm over here grinning ear to ear. You can totally tell I'm like a summit nerd, right? Like I'm sitting here going like, I don't want this to end. Let's just keep talking about summits all day, right? Like
it, man.
me and I just like jam out on summits.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
it's
this is
awesome.
gonna be super valuable. I think people are gonna love this. And definitely drop a comment below if you're liking this. If you want maybe to do another session at some time, let me know, and I'll bring Mark on. We
Don't
can have another
judge me for being a
conversation.
summit nerd. I love summits. Okay. So
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, price points. Honestly, I believe that it really comes more down to your audience. We've tested a lot of different ones, different price points, and I can give a couple examples of this. Like with my healthcare professional side, on the healthcare professional side, they have more disposable income, so we can go a little bit higher. We can go anywhere from like one-day summits or multi-day, but like one-day summits, we can go anywhere from around the top or like the higher level price point to around 200 to even 400. We've experimented with 400, and I mean, and that's not like high ticket, but remember, your one-day summit is kind of the entry point. So we're usually using that more as a low price point. But what we've actually seen is, for us, anything really over that 200 to 250 mark, we start to see the numbers, like the conversions kind of drop. But even upwards to 250, we can still get pretty good conversions on that. And for me, I'm much happier, especially on a summit, going a little bit higher, still making roughly the same amount. You're just having less sales. But because the whole point is, for me with a one-day summit, is the relationship. So I'm not pushing hard on that. So if I just kind of put that offer there and people take it and still am able to make roughly the same amount without having to go high pressure on that, then that's one thing. Now, on the other side, with our direct to consumer, so like general consumer, we see a much different aspect, right? Like we have a hard time going really over $120. Like, I mean, that's kind of the higher limit. We really have to throw in good value there. We see a lot more people taking the $57 to $67 offer. But again, this is the audience. They're also kind of trained with that. I'd say if you don't even know what to do with your price point, is look somebody in your niche or in a comparable niche, find a summit out there and see what they've charged. And that's probably roughly going to be the good spot. I know this is kind of how it is in the health space. I think in the online marketing space, at least the summits that I've run over there, I see it more like the direct to consumer, and actually even a little bit lower. Sorry for my podcasters out there. I'm a podcaster too, but podcasters don't like to spend a lot of money. So like we've actually seen on those type of summits that it's, you have to even drop it down a little bit lower. Yeah. But I'd love to hear kind of what you've seen as well, Navid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're pretty much correct there. I've seen in my program, Virtual Summit Mastery, kind of some people, there's definitely professional niches, and towards that kind of market, B2B as well, you can obviously go a little bit higher if that's kind of your goal. You have to always keep that in mind. If you want to have a little bit less customers kind of go there. Also, I've seen kind of in real estate and stuff like that, something they are a little bit suspicious in some industries. Why is it so cheap, right? If you're pricing it 67 to 97. So you might want to go start there around, I mean, depends a little bit if you want to have a one-time offer and stuff like that. And then you can obviously increase the price. I've seen kind of all the way up to around $400 price point, but then it's kind of on the course kind of level in some markets. So you're going to have to keep that in mind. I think for most summits, $67 to $97 is a good price range. I think for one-day summits, like depends the value you're packing in there. If they're used to seeing like 20 to 30 speaker summits and all of them are kind of in that price range, you kind of need to have some really good bonuses or some things that people can implement things, and then maybe you can keep the same price range. Otherwise, maybe going a little bit lower if it's not the point to monetize kind of that front-end offer. And also you can increase the customer value while having like a bump offer. Maybe that should be a little bit typically lower than your All Access Pass. Maybe that will be 27, 19. I mean, I've seen $19 all the way up to kind of $47, depending on the price point. Obviously, if you have a higher ticket summit, you can maybe go all the way up to $97 for a bump offer just there on the cart, and having something that is really compelling, like templates or notes or whatever that is from your summit. I think that's really powerful. The other thing I've seen, or we are starting to implement a lot more, is right after they purchase the All Access Pass or Premium Pass, we want to have a one-click upsell. Like that, I mean, Russell Brunson is using this right now for his virtual summits. Actually, two of his most successful funnels, they're Affiliate Bootcamp and the other one is the 30-day summit, basically leading into the one funnel away challenge. It's like one of the most popular things he's ever done, and that's summit funnels basically. And he has obviously there they buy that for like I think it's $100. He also has a shipping option if they want the physical version of the book. But then after that, they get a one-click upsell for $297. So that kind of stuff is worth testing. It needs to be really compelling for people to just take you up on a one-click upsell right away after spending money with you. But something that kind of takes them deeper, something that solves kind of some kind of objection, or like maybe some kind of things to implement the stuff from the actual summit. I think templates, even more kind of done for you stuff, more in-depth training on something that they also might need. Like Russell is big on traffic generation. So for his stuff, he uses traffic secrets as a one-click upsell. So think about what you can do in your market. I think that's kind of where I'm going with this. So I increase cart value, more compelling for my affiliates to promote because they can get 40 to 50% commission through the entire funnel. And another thing we are doing, this is actually, I mean, this is this stuff that is money right there. On the order confirmation page, add a webinar or add some kind of thing to take people deeper. I'm not saying that will convert really well for you, but really that's kind of what I've seen, like, Russell and some other people are doing for some other funnels, and we're gonna start implementing that more for summits. So let's say I have List Building School, I might have a virtual summit webinar there on the order confirmation. It's probably not going to convert that well right there because people just bought, but they still have, they get consumed by that content. So maybe 0.5% even for a 2 to 3K program, and I'm making a few sales there, and then they get consumed by that and will purchase even more later if they just kind of, yeah, this sounds good, maybe I'll purchase this later, and they still know about it. That's my approach to this. And obviously you can have back end and all this kind of stuff after the fact as well. What do you think about that, Mark?
Yeah, no, like you nailed it right there, and actually brought up a good point. It may be, I can't believe I didn't mention it earlier, is with the one-day summit is right. You can actually drop the value of that a little bit more. But the other thing to really consider, because the point of it is to build that relationship, is you really need to consider the value you're delivering also on that summit. And one of the things that we've been seeing, and it may sound counterintuitive, but I think it makes sense to everybody as well, is what we're actually seeing is a longer session is not necessarily better. We're actually seeing that people are preferring to have shorter sessions that they can get through all of the information and be able to get through multiple of the different sessions, versus like a multi-day summit where they may not be able to get through all of them, or they may not even be able to get through the entire thing. And a perfect example that I just saw with this, I was working with Rachel over with the Moolah Marketing. She just did a summit, and she had 20 or 19 of us on there speaking, but we had a maximum 5 to 7 minutes. Like, so we did a 5 to 7 minute like value drop, and that was it. So people could really just go in there and consume the information. Now her objective, her whole goal of that was to be able to build rapport with her people, right? She wanted them to go through and consume it and feel like they got a lot of value and it was for free. So then they would, do the rule reciprocity on the back end. So I agree with you. You can drop the value, drop the price with a one-day summit as well, but always focus on like, how am I over delivering with value, either from the presentation or additional offerings that I'm going to put, how am I going to think, like, how am I change it up, think outside the box, always get creative with it.
For sure. I mean, the objective, as you mentioned there, objective is everything there. Because if your objective is to build rapport, obviously you can do like a, one day, some even live stream this if you want, so people can ask questions live. That's obviously one. I don't always recommend it. I mean, most summits will be kind of pre-recorded. Maybe you can mix in some live elements if you want, but usually pre-recorded works, because it's easier to kind of schedule and stuff like that. But if you just wanted to do shorter segments, I've seen this done during launches, and maybe you can speak to that as well, Mark. Like, these kind of live casts. I mean, that's kind of a one-day summit, right? I mean, Pete Vargas is using it. I've seen kind of Ryan Levesque. I've seen like Stu McLaren did it right during his launch. You can bring on students during this to do like a, student success stories and bringing them on. That's something kind of we have done during some of my launches, right? There's not really the traditional sense kind of that your goal is to just, hey, we're gonna, have an all access pass and all this, but that's kind of during a launch to actually make, typically a higher ticket sale for 2K or even 3K sometimes. So that's kind of what I've seen kind of across the board. No one is calling it kind of a one-day summit, but that's kind of what it is, because it usually runs for a few hours. Typically these are live if it's like during a launch, or at least they're kind of streaming it. So have you seen any success with this, or what's your take on these kind of summits?
Oh yeah, like I definitely see them happening all over. We use them in our business as well. As we just call them like live streaming events. And yeah, I mean, technically they're a one-day summit. The objective, as we've just mentioned, is different. Like the objective typically with this is going to be more for like a higher ticket sell or some kind of urgency sell. Like you're trying to get people on there and convince them to take action, usually on a sale. If you're just doing it as a list builder, I don't think it would make as much sense, because you're really asking a big ask for whoever that speaker is, or, and especially if you're doing a series of speakers, and it's a pretty hefty amount of work to line this all up and make sure everybody's there and hope your internet works and people don't, skip or whatever. So I typically only use that strategy like during one of my actual like product launch, like the 4 video series. I'll use that towards the end, like cart close, to really create high value and urgency. But yeah, you're right. It's totally a one-day summit. It's a live streaming one-day summit. The objective being usually like high ticket or premium sale.
For sure. I mean, they also, as you mentioned, lining up these kind of bigger name experts takes a little bit of time, right? So, especially, I mean, the students, I mean, that's kind of the issue sometimes. Sometimes they mix it up a little bit. You have maybe some experts. I was featured on kind of one of Ryan Levesque's live streams, one of his launches, and obviously they have to kind of line this up, make sure the timing works. These typically works better live. Also, they want maybe some bonuses for some experts. And there's a lot of work that goes in there. But obviously, if you just do 1 launch or 2 launches a year, that's kind of how you can utilize this. But it's still like a live cast. You kind of hear it under the name live cast. But to me, it can also be like summit, whatever name you choose for this is still the same thing to me. But the other thing I wanted to cover is using a one-day summit for affiliate promos and affiliate products you promote. And I know you did this very successfully and finished very high up on a leaderboard. Maybe you can share a little bit more on that. I think that was very, very impressive what you did with that kind of summit, and kind of how you picked that and everything that went down, basically. I think that would be really valuable, and kind of share some more kind of insights around people, kind of expanding people's mind around how they can use this.
Yeah. And it's actually kind of funny. Like, so we have a mutual friend reached out. He was doing a launch for one of his programs, and it's in a speaker niche. And I'm like, hey, I have no audience in the speaker niche. Like, that's like, I can't really help you there, So I was like trying to back out of it, but I owed him a favor. And so he called in that favor. So I'm like, okay, like this was actually probably my biggest, like as far as participating in launch. Most of the times I'm over in the healthcare space on this stuff, but this was in the influencer space. And there was like 150 people in that, 150 of probably the biggest names you've heard of or seen, all sitting in that affiliate group. And I'm sitting here going, oh my God, I'm going to look like a a dud in front of all of these influencers, right? Like, I don't want that to be how they perceive me. So I'm sitting there going, what can I do? What can I do? And I'm like, Mark, come on, like, go back to the basics. So I said, okay, I'm going to do a summit. So I went to my buddy Pete and said, okay, what problem does your program solve? Now, keep in mind, remember, I have a list of 0 for this niche. He says, okay, well, the problem that our program solves is it helps speakers get on stages. I said, cool. So I took that problem, I went out and I built a 1-day summit around that problem. And I called it the Expert Speaker Workshop. So one thing we haven't mentioned is with a 1-day summit is they don't have to be called summits. Like, you can brand them whatever works for you. Like I mentioned earlier, Neuro Fundamentals, Expert Speaker Workshop, there's all kinds, you can name it whatever you want. So what I ended up doing then is I brought in 13 experts, authors, teachers, coaches, associations in the speaker space, because they all have the audiences I'm looking for. And I ran a 1-day summit around it. I ran the summit around the problem of becoming a speaker. I did not solve the problem of getting stages, which was the problem that his program solved. So on there, I think we built a list. It was small. It was like under 3,000. It was like 2,800 or something like that. So super small list, right? But a highly engaged list of speakers who wanted to become speakers, and they just got all this information and they're all motivated and excited. Now, what's the one thing they need? They need to figure out how to go win stages. So I nurtured the list for about 2 weeks, and then his launch started, and I just pointed them all towards his launch. And so in the end, I ended up taking 5th place out of this leaderboard of like hundreds of affiliates. And again, some of them with list size of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, putting a lot of ad spend in. But the point of it was, it's again, what we've been talking about this whole time, it wasn't about the size of the list, right? It was the fact that I built a highly engaged list around this one topic, which brings up one other kind of sequential aspect to this. Is there's no reason why you can't run like micro niches, like do a micro summit for this niche, for like exactly what we're talking about right here, towards an affiliate offer or something like that. And you don't even necessarily have to keep that going. Like, I don't want to be in the speaker niche the rest of my life, right? So like, I'm done with that. It's all over there. And of course, I answer any questions anybody has, but I usually just point them over to Pete and the team. But you can, this is why I love the 1-day summit. It is so versatile. Like, I couldn't, So that's kind of the insight with that. I'm not going to go deeper.
I have a few follow-ups to that, but I think the first thing you shared there around the name of the summit, I think we are even doing this for our bigger summits, even multi-day. You don't need to name it summit in the name. You can have it, as a list building school. You can call it like a workshop. You can call it whatever, right? I mean, I think that's even I've seen summits called sessions, whatever kind of makes sense for you. Masterclass, even kind of like virtual summit secrets or something. It doesn't have to be kind of summit in the official name. It's kind of a summit if you have people on there, whatever, but it doesn't have to be in there. It can be whatever. So I think that's a good point, and obviously might make it easier for you to name it. Also, I think another point to this is don't call whatever you're doing interviews. I think that's also a mistake I see people make, because the perceived value is higher if you call it a masterclass or a workshop series or something like that, or training series, whatever. An interview typically is considered kind of free on a podcast form. So I think that's something I share with my students sometimes. It's kind of important. Just kind of the word choices of things, it makes it kind of the perceived value a lot higher. But the other thing there, kind of going back to what you shared around this amazing launch you did, or the amazing promotion for this 1-day summit, Mark, I think, how did you actually get people how many people did you have there? Did you say you have about 10 people, or do you have more? And how did you get them to promote for this, whoever you had on there? Maybe you can talk a little bit about kind of how you picked the speakers to be part of this, and how you actually got them to share it, because obviously you had 0 lists from the beginning, and you got to about 3,000, which is amazing for this, very targeted. And that's kind of a great way to just have this targeted list and promote something in the back end there.
Yeah. So there's 2 aspects to this. People might and I actually kind of thought about this as well, as like, well, are these speakers going to think I'm taking advantage of them because I'm using them to build my list and then promoting somebody else's speaker platform. Now, keep in mind, he was on that one day summit as well. So it wasn't like I just did these people and then went over there. But actually, how I overcame that and how I made sure it wasn't the issue is because I made sure it was a huge win for all of them. And this is kind of funny. This is why I was chuckling about it. Is I actually one of the speakers that I had on there runs the Expert Speaker Academy or something like that, and he's a super awesome guy, lovely, lovely personality. And he actually had me come on and do a whole webinar to his audience afterwards. So we ended up, like, again, this is where the partnerships, strategic partnerships happen. So I ended up actually, from that workshop, I did 3 different partner webinars to these people's audiences. One, because I made them feel extremely valued. Like, I let them know that this was something that I complimented, and I let them know how great it was. But 2, I used the strategy on here. I'm going to build the list, right? I'm going to have the master list. But I'm not just in this for me. I want it to be a win for everyone else. So I let everybody on there offer a free gift, right? Which we do often. But the funny thing is, when I was on this webinar with Majid, he was saying, and I didn't know this, but after that summit had ended, I went ahead and left it run on the Ever Summit protocol inside the Virtual Summit software. And he told everybody on this webinar, he's like, this guy reaches out to me. I actually met him at a TED talk, like a TEDx talk. My partner was speaking at it. He was speaking at it. And I'm like, hey, I'm running this one day this summit in 2 weeks. You think I could get you to speak next week? And so it was super quick, but I kept it on the Ever Summit protocol. And he was saying, like, I met this guy at a conference, add me on, I spoke. And then all of a sudden I start seeing this summit that he did everywhere because everybody in that space was promoting it. And he said, and then all of a sudden I just start seeing these leads come in, and then they kept coming in. And then for weeks after, more leads and more leads. And like, I was his highest, you keep in mind, like, that's a small niche space, right? So, cause it kind of blew my mind. Like, you actually knew the leads were coming from me, but like, for him, he was blown away because I was building his list. So he was happy to do whatever I wanted. So it was huge value for them. And it was also, again, a value for the rest of us too.
Yeah, that's kind of what it all comes down to. You're going to make sure you can add some kind of, make it a win-win essentially. I mean, you can have a lead magnet, and that's kind of the cool thing when you can have an Ever Summit. Like, you can add so much more value to your speakers. Like, it's just about how you position it to them, and you need to mention this. You need to mention that you can have, you are going to repurpose, because some niches or some speakers, especially, they have been burned by a lot of summits out there. You kind of have this kind of being as honest about this. Like, some people, they're not very happy about kind of their experiences, and that's usually because they don't have advice like this or trainings like Virtual Summit Mastery or what Mark is sharing here. You haven't been consumed by that. So actually, if you implement some of this, you're gonna be kind of ahead of everyone, basically 99.9% of people, and just making sure you're doing this for the right reasons, and actually helping your speakers is not only about you as a summit host growing your list. It's about them as well growing their business and getting something out of this, whether that's monetary or kind of exposure or whatever that is. I think that's very important, and I guess that kind of played a big role into your massive success with that promotion. And just kind of one thing on this, Mark, did you actually promote you didn't have an all access pass or something around this? You just did you mention right away, hey, sign up for Pete's launch, or what did you do after they had signed up for your summit?
Yeah, so I had like the typical, like, just all access pass, but I didn't push it. Like, I didn't like push it in sales. I mean, it's just always there. Like, in the Virtual Summit software, there's the ability to upgrade and keep it, but I wasn't pushing it. The whole thing I was doing, like, I was 100% focused for me at that point on that summit, was all about building a relationship with the audience. I wanted them to build that know, like, and trust, so that then they can look at me as the source of information, and they would trust me when I offered Pete's program, which, again, like, this goes without saying, but like, obviously it's a good friend of mine. I've done all of his programs. I knew it was an amazing program. Sure. So I had no qualms whatsoever to promote it. I would never send them somewhere that, I didn't believe in, but that's the point. Like, you get to build that trust. And then now you have that kind of responsibility to then give them that, because they wanted it, right? They were asking, okay, now I've got this knowledge. What about getting on stages? And that was, like, essentially we were just giving them what they were asking for. But no, I didn't have anything else. I didn't monetize it. And I didn't sell anything on the back end.
I'm sure some people purchase just kind of because it's that flow, right? But I mean, that was not the goal of it. This is like we coming back to the objective again. But what about the timing of things? Like, how far in advance did you do it? Like, when did you start promote Pete? I think that's something a lot of people watching they will be interested in.
Yeah, so I did it in about 4 weeks, just under 4 weeks. So again, like I've done enough of these that I can really put them together. So I from start to finish 4 weeks. I think we only promoted it for about a week. Like, but again, like we talked about, each of the speakers sent out three or four emails. Again, it was all added value. It all made them look good, so they were happy to do it. And then I nurtured for 2 weeks, and then there was a week with, just kind of a low week. I probably just sent one, like, cause I was sending for those 2 weeks, I was sending an email like 3 times a week. To the first week, it was like every day, then 3 times, and then once, just so they didn't get burnt out, but they were still keeping me top of mind. Because the one thing to know, like if I wouldn't have emailed them again for 3 weeks, like, unfortunately, I know we all think we're memorable, but people have a very short attention span.
Sure.
This is kind of this is like just a random pro tip that I throw out there because I think it's super valuable. Like, even after you do a summit, like a big summit, like we just got done doing a summit last month, 26,000 leads, almost $70,000. But the fact of the matter is, if now when we email those leads, every email for us starts off with something that says, hey, it was great seeing you on that summit. It was so glad we met you on that summit. We were reminding them how they know us, because people's attention span is so short, and they'll forget you. And what'll end up happening, one of two things. One, they'll just unsubscribe and they'll be gone. Or two, if you have a huge, massive list like that, you'll get a bunch of spam complaints, which could cause problems. So 2 weeks of nurture, 1 week of like, hey, like I think I had one email that made it like super like, hey guys, there's something really interesting coming. I'm not like, stay tuned. Like, I'll get back to you. I'm really like, like something that just made them like kind of shook the cage a little bit. Yeah. And then the next week started the promotion, and his launch was like a 3 or 4 week long launch from start to finish. So it was, in total, when he asked me, I only had about 3 months before his launch started. So I didn't have a lot of time, but I did the 1-day summit in 4 weeks. Yeah. Nurtured for 2 weeks, 1 week lull, and then started his launch.
Awesome. And do you want to share how much commission you made from this, or how much you generated
no
from this?
You know me, I'm always an open book here. So we took fifth on that, and I ended up making about $50,000 in commissions and bonuses, like monetary. But I also, probably the most impactful thing I got from it was two things. One was I immediately became known on that list of influencers. I can't tell you how many of them actually reached out to me personally, like, hey, who are you? Like, we need to get to know you, And the funniest story would probably be like our mutual friend of ours, Selena Sue. That's how we met. Fast forward 4 months later, I convinced her to move down to Puerto Rico. And now she lives down in Puerto Rico in our community down there. But then the second aspect would be, I was the top 5 people, which is why I was fighting so hard for that, got into this mastermind. Pete did a 1-day mastermind, and it had some of the biggest names there. And that for me was super huge. So monetarily, it was around $50-ish thousand, but value wise, it was way more.
Amazing. Congrats on that. Actually, I had a similar experience as well when I've been kind of number 1 and, top 10 leaderboards as well. Kind of for Ryan Levesque's launch, I was like number 5 for 1 year, and like even from some other launches as well, like people notice you, right? And like even with kind of summits or other things, there's a lot of unexpected benefits from doing something. Yes, there's the money you can make from something, but then as Mark shared here, like people noticing you, that's pretty valuable, right? If you get more opportunities because you're just kind of finishing number 5 on the leaderboard, that's kind of, you can't really put a price on that, because that can have, value for, years to come in relationships and other opportunities that open up for you as well. And I just wanted to share kind of a tip around kind of how you can use this affiliate stuff as well. I think for software products that you use in your business, I think it's a great idea. Let's say I'm using ConvertKit or ActiveCampaign or ClickFunnels or something. I might do like a little 1-day summit with either just myself as the only speaker, kind of educating people around it, or I bring on some users kind of from there. I mean, it's not so hard to find users of ConvertKit or ClickFunnels. You just kind of go out there and find like, let's say 10 users who are good at it. They might have a list around it as well, and they share kind of why they love it, maybe some different strategies, how they have made it happen with the software or whatever, and then you can like do this. Or another thing as well is you can bring on kind of one of the educators of the company as well to do kind of a workshop or a webinar on there, so you can have this kind of giving away a free trial or something on that. I think that's, you might not need to monetize that kind of summit with all access pass at all. You might just kind of have the call to action be, hey, sign up for a trial for this software, because that's recurring revenue. Like ClickFunnels, they have like 40% or ConvertKit like 30% or whatever it is, right? You can make some real revenue from that over time, right? And also people coming in. If you have a few thousand signing up, maybe a few hundred take you up on that trial. If it's a free trial, absolutely. If that's the clear call to action on the summit, you're gonna get a few hundred people probably signing up for a trial like that, unless they already have it. But that's kind of something I'm going to experiment with a lot more myself, in addition to kind of the traditional sense, just having a 1-day summit and then maybe an affiliate program in the back. And like, let's say I'm promoting Tribe of Stu McLaren, I might do a membership summit, right? That's kind of a clear relationship with his program. So I think that's kind of some things. I don't know if we have shared a lot here, Mark. We kind of go into kind of everything, around this. I don't know if you want to share some kind of a few final things, or if you think we have covered pretty much everything you wanted to share here.
No, like I think that's an amazing insight that you just shared there, because reoccurring revenue, right? Most businesses don't have the reoccurring revenue. Affiliate commissions are great. So that's a huge value bomb you just dropped right there. One thing I would like to say, which is in the summit realm, but for everybody listening, we're talking about hosting summits, which is super powerful. But I can't tell you how powerful it is to be a speaker on a summit. And there's two things I want to say with that. One is, if you're not utilizing that, you should be utilizing it. Being a speaker on a summit is extremely powerful from a brand recognition point of view, but it's also very powerful from a way to build your audience, to get customers, to bring attention, to build relationships, etc. So I highly recommend it, because I think it's an underutilized tool that we have to get our message out to the world. The second aspect to that is, I also think the ones who are using it are not giving it the credit it's worth. Being a speaker on a summit is a responsibility, and it's a huge value. The host who's putting this on is taking on a lot of time, and I can't tell you how much time and energy Navid is putting into this. I mean, having pre-calls, follow-up calls, the email communications, making sure that the people he's bringing to you are vetted and are ready to give you the best information possible. I mean, like, Navid's putting so much time and energy into this, and that needs to be respected. So as a summit speaker, one, this is a great opportunity. You should be doing it. And two, don't ever complain about having to email for being on a summit. Like, look at it like this. For me, I view summits as collaborative marketing strategies. It's a win-win-win. The audience wins because they're getting the solutions to the problems, which is huge. We're making an impact in the world. The host wins because they're building an audience that hopefully is going to move forward with them along their customer journey. And then the speakers win because we're getting brand recognition. And in general, we're getting we're building our list too. So if I'm sitting there as a summit speaker and go, yeah, sure, Navid, I'll be on your summit, but I'm not going to email my list about it. Well, that's not fair to everybody else who's participating. And when I say fair, I mean, it's not like, oh, it's not fair. It's like let's have higher ethics. Let's have higher standards, and let's make it a win-win-win for everybody. So I just really want to put that, because that's something that kind of irks me a little bit, is the people, like, when I hear people say, don't contact me to speak on your summit and then ask me to email. Well, look, don't speak on the summit if you're not going to help share the message, because it's a valuable message. And if you don't believe in the message, then maybe you shouldn't speak on it anyway. So I wanted to say that. Do you have a comment on that first?
Yeah, just one small thing on that before we kind of wrap up here. But honestly, I reach out to quite some people, obviously, in my days, and I see sometimes people say, I don't speak at summits. That's kind of that's the response. Even though, I mean, now I have done summits for a long time. Maybe they didn't know me or something, but we do summits differently. I think there's a right and wrong way to do it. Obviously, if you implement the strategy we share here during this session and in my program, and kind of what Mark is talking about on the podcast as well, the Virtual Summit podcast, then you're gonna do it right. At least you're gonna get the right strategies, and then it's kind of up to you to implement it correctly and do it for the right reasons. I think then you're gonna do well. And also, as you mentioned with speakers, yeah, I do agree with you, obviously, that if you have speakers on, it's great if they can share it. But I mean, again, if you have a Gary Vaynerchuk on, then you're kind of gaining more. There's a few differences there. But with most people, I would say kind of the trusted authorities or kind of B-listers and kind of the up-and-comers, I would say that most of them, they're gaining from being part of it as well, right? So if they're gaining from the experience of being part of it, I think they should do something if they can to promote it as much as possible. We don't require people to promote, but we do get a very, very high percentage, usually in the 90-95% of the speakers we have, sometimes even higher. They do share their summits out to their email list several times, and that's kind of how we build up, obviously, very large email list, very engaged people coming on, because, getting introduced to someone's list, that's probably the best introduction you can get, right? Hey, Navid is a rock star, Mark is a rock star, right? That's kind of great to hear, and you see that, and people like instantly sign up. The conversion rates on those, when people click through, is very, very high as well, and they convert also very high to buyers, from free summit to paid, very high conversion rate there as well. So it's kind of wanted to wrap with this. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to share there. Otherwise, you can share what people can connect more with you, Mark, and we take it from there. Hopefully, drop a comment below as well if you love what we have shared here. I mean, we could charge for this class. We have shared so much value you can implement, really, but we kind of, this could be like few $100, right, for this information right here. There's so in-depth stuff we have shared, different things you can do with this, especially if you're using summits or if you're coming into this new and kind of utilizing the one-day summits as well in your business. So yeah.
Yeah, I kind of have two things. One, I'd say is, for me, like, summits, of course, the one-day summit is my baby. I love it. There, profit leads. We talk about that a lot, and those are fundamental to business. But as a healthcare professional, I mean, the whole reason I got into this originally was to impact more lives. When I was in my brick and mortar business, the most I could do was I could help a couple hundred patients a week. But then once I got into the online world, I was able now to help over 100,000 patients a week, and summits help me do that. So for me, summits are more than just leads and profit. There's people out there who are suffering, who have a problem, who have a challenge, that get the solution to those problems from industry niche experts for free, where they may not have ever had that information before. So I believe it's making a bigger impact in the world, and it's getting your message out to the world. So summits for me are one of the most powerful and effective things there are across the board. I'd say the best way to reach out to me, I'm over at Virtual Summit Software. That's where we hang out, virtualsummits.com. And, like, Navid, love everything we're doing here. And this is always like a blast. We chat back and forth. Obviously, you can follow me over on Facebook, Virtual Summit Software. And then for anybody that's heard about the software from Navid here, you guys get a special promo. You're more than welcome to get free access, 30 days free access to the software. Just use the code MASTERY. Obviously, Virtual Summit Mastery. Just use that and you get a special discount, and that's only valid to Navid's tribe right there.
That's awesome, man. I didn't even know you would throw this out there, but that's great. If you're like just starting out and you want to kind of do this, I think it's a great option for you if you don't currently kind of running some in your business. I mean, we are both agreeing on this. Every business can run summits. It can work in any market, at any stage of your business as well. So I highly recommend, whether you start with kind of what we talked about today, or maybe you have done this and you want to implement the one-day summit in your business, or a multi-day summit, just make sure you do it. Because I honestly, as Mark said, it's all about impacting more people, and a summit can have this reach you're looking for. Yes, webinars and all this other stuff, it's great. We still use it in our business. It can be a great complement, but nothing really can scale, at the level of summits, at least kind of from my perspective, unless you're obviously Facebook ads and all this getting more expensive. So with summits, you can do this. on a budget basically. You obviously have to put in your time with the speakers, but honestly, just going out there and doing this, and I hope you find value from this, and drop a comment below as well if you have any other takeaways here. And we also post the links to some resources we mentioned. Mark's software, obviously, you can use the code MASTERY, get access to this 30 days for free. I didn't even know he would give you access to this, but that's awesome. And try it out. Let me know what you think about this, and I'll talk to you guys very soon. Ciao for now. Bye bye.